episode 92 of the Wrist Cheese Radio podcast. I'm your host, Bro Dinky. With me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Schmidt. Schmitty, what's going on this week, kid?
Oh, a whole lot of nothing. Traveling, so recording from the road again. Um, Apologies to the community for yet another late drop in the week, but hopefully we'll make it up for Tuesday's morning when you guys commute to work. But all good, my friend. How was your weekend?
It was good. It was good. Part of the uh, contributing factors to our late drop was I spent the entire day Sunday in the car coming home from Maine because New York traffic. Well, not only that, you hit Boston traffic and then New York traffic. So doubling down on horrendous traffic with small children in the car for extended periods. It was
Yeah.
an adventure, but all in all, a quite a good trip. Up at a little lake in Maine called Lake Sebago. Some friends have a house up there that they do summer in, and they've got all the fun water toys, jet skis, and such. So my kids have never seen anything like that. Just going ape, having at it. So couldn't get them out of the water, like
Love it.
nonstop sunburns, and
The way God intended. The way
that's
God
right. So
intended.
the real summer experience. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
a really good trip overall. But yeah, pretty neat. Getting back to work today was a bit of you know, a grind.
Uh,
Let's just leave
yeah,
it at that.
a bear for sure.
Yeah, and when you're the as they say, when the cat is away, the mice will play. So I had to clean up all the loose ends when I got in this morning, and then try to get things going in the right direction. But all's
Oh, I
okay.
hear that. I hear that. I Good, good.
All
No,
is
no
okay.
skies falling yet, huh?
No, no, everybody's alive, everybody's intact. So
Good, good to hear.
yeah, yeah. Other than that, I mean, our buddy Nick teased the first little inkling of this year's uh men wear pink strap. Obviously, given the hypersensitive landscape that we occupy, somebody had a beef with the word real, and now it is men wear pink. I don't know why we couldn't just make it real ones wear pink, real. I don't know. But either way, it is now the men wear pink Brodinky strap habit strap. So he did a little teaser on that. He's going to be dropping it early to email subscribers. So definitely get on that email list. You'll know what it looks like first, when it drops first. I know some people have already been DMing me, like sort of trying to squeeze some info out. Not that I have a ton of it. I have a little bit, but either way, just subscribe to the email, get it firsthand. This way I don't have to worry about what I'm divulging, and it's not mine to let out and whatever. But definitely get on that. It's going to be a good one this year. So, um, hopefully we're going to raise some more money for a very good cause. I guess we'll get into the new stuff here. Why don't we start off with the What If collection here? I know you're very stoked about that one.
I love it. I love it.
So
Oh,
it's hip to be square, I guess you'd say.
yes, yes. It's very cool. I think, I mean, and I could be completely wrong, but I believe this is Swatch's first ever square watch. And I guess the idea behind the campaign is what if originally, instead of making the round swatches as we know them today, basically Swatch in a what if scenario decided, hey, you know what, let's make it square, and what that would have really looked like. I'm excited really for this collection. I have quite a few swatches in my arsenal, several moon swatches, as you guys probably know. But even still, outside of that, swatch for me is it's a great entry price point watch. It's a Swiss watch. It's just a nice everyday beater when you don't want to bring out your nice stuff. But it's still very cool. And I think this new collection, I'm excited to see what the future is going to bring. But I think it's a very cool capsule moment in Swatch's tenure, and I think it's going to be very exciting to see this drop.
Yeah. So Square, we've seen the Square sort of make a comeback in recent memory, right? I mean, certainly the sort of famous Square models have definitely caught on with your tanks and things like that of late. But we've seen Oris do it. Now we're seeing Swatch do it. This one is about 33, 34 millimeters with a 10.5 thickness. So not a very big guy, but I think the shape will kind of lend itself to filling out the wrist a little more than your typical, when people think of a 33 millimeter watch, right? They think of like,
Yeah, yeah.
your Black Bay 32s and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, that's a small watch. But I think the geometry will help it out a little bit on the wrist there. And yeah, it's an interesting drop. And it's just it's what Swatch does, right? They're about having fun. They're sort of about being playful and just kind of rolling with it. So they decided to come up with this little sort of gimmick for their capsule moment in time here, and this is what they're going with, the square watch. So what if we had square watches instead of round, and history was altered?
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm excited for this. I definitely will be picking one up at some point. I just can't decide which colorway I want. There's four initially on drops. So there's like a hunter green, a black, a beige, and a gray. I'm leaning towards the black, I think, which I think is probably what most people will pick up. But this is fun, man. It's funky. It gives me, Monaco vibes in some ways, which I think is very cool. Obviously not a chrono, but very interesting, especially when you look at the case design. You're missing the classic iconic kind of three prongs that extrude from the case on a traditional Swatch. You're getting more of a standard strap. So I would imagine you could probably change up the straps quite a bit here and kind of play around with what you have in the design. Don't quote me on that, but it's certainly much more of a possibility than what we've had before. And I love the way that they were able to integrate kind of the bezel from the case, if you will, to protect the size of the crystal. It almost kind of comes upwards to create the bezel, which is very unique shape. It's like L shaped when you look at it from the side in its profile, which is very interesting. So we're able to get a very low profile crystal, but it's going to be a box shaped, I'm assuming, acrylic glass, which is going to be very interesting. I think, especially when you look at it from the side, it's going to be very visually different than what we're accustomed to from Swatch. So I am very excited about this collection.
Yeah, and I think this is sort of what we now have to become accustomed to. I mean, we've seen Swatch do it twice now with the bioceramic. We've seen other brands like we talk about all the time. Seiko got it sort of like the resin game. We've seen Maurice Lacroix do the repurposed materials thing. We're getting sort of this, I don't know, informal type watch that's I guess a little bit more playful and a little bit less jewelry.
Yeah.
And I know G-Shock and the like have been doing it forever, and it's not necessarily a new thing, but for brands like this to be doing it's I don't know. For me, it's sort of an indicator of where things are going, or where they are, or what sort of I guess the consumer is looking for nowadays. I mean, we know based on sort of streetwear and culture and everything that, I mean, look, I've seen people in sweatpants doing things I never thought I would. Like I mean, I went to an event at Sotheby's, and there was a dude in a white t-shirt and sweatpants, and I was like, what on earth?
Who let you in here, man?
I was like, everybody who works there is dressed in a suit, dressed to the nines, right? It's in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, really? Really?
Decorum.
Listen, dude, like I'm all for being comfortable. I'm all for being a low-key dude. Like I don't necessarily like to get decked out very often, but like mother of God, I don't know. Like I was just like, man, I'm surprised they didn't like pull you aside and they're like, dude, here's a
You
jacket.
gotta leave. Yeah, you gotta leave, bro. Yeah, man, that's it's very interesting. Obviously, the world has gotten so much more casual in lieu of COVID and all these things. It just made everyone kind of feel more comfortable being super comfortable in kind of like the what I would wear at home to watch TV on my couch kind of attire. But you know what? It is what it is. This is the world that's evolving. And I think that, you kind of said it perfectly. This is kind of a playful nod to where the watch industry is now and where it potentially could be. And let's just think of it this way. Let's just say that this isn't a forever thing for Swatch. This to me is very cool from a collectible standpoint, in the fact that this is kind of the first of its kind There could be more. There probably will be more. But if this is it and this is all we get, to me, that's very cool because it's a snapshot in a moment of time where Swatch decided to do something different. And quite frankly, for them, very revolutionary because it's completely antithetical to what made their watches so popular. This classic round design. And probably one of my favorite things, I don't know if you noticed, is there's no kind of like battery cover in the way that we've had it before on swatches. You're getting kind of more of the moon swatch route with kind of like the little, painted battery cover that pops off.
All right.
And on each one, there's like a little different like dial representation on the battery cover. So it's almost as is like this is a square case. You flip it over, and there's still a round swatch
Yeah, I did see
on the
that.
backside. I'm like, that's kind of kitschy, but it's also very like aware that like this square watch wouldn't exist if the round one, didn't run first, like the round swatch crawled so this one could run. You know what I mean? So it's very cool. It's very interesting. I am excited to see where this goes. And I love all the marketing behind it. I love the videos of like everything being square and what that would look like if you had a square basketball and a square hoop. And it's just cool riding around on a bicycle with square tires. Like, I don't know. It's very fun. It's whimsical and it's very Swatch. If you could boil it down to that. So I'm
Yeah.
here for it.
And I think they're trying to get back to sort of that era of time where it was sort of like a thing to wear more than one swatch at a time.
Oh, for sure. For
Right.
sure.
Especially when you're getting, a 33 millimeter case. Like now you can get away with that, right? You don't want to be wearing two 41 millimeter, 44 millimeter. That no way. It's just uncomfortable. It's clunky. Now we're talking 33. All right. Now I can see it, right? You have a few things like that, some smaller stuff. Now you can get away with it. Like it back in what was it, like the 80s, early 90s? Like that was kind of a thing, right? It was like you wore your neon swatches, and it was sort of just like a fashion accessory for some
Yeah.
people. But I think they're trying to get back to that in some degree with watches like this as well.
Oh, for sure. For sure. 100%.
All right, I guess we'll stick with the squares. Tag has a new Monaco out, and it is in titanium, and it is a racing blue chronograph.
Oof.
It looks pretty good.
Yeah, I'm not gonna sugarcoat my love for this watch. Obviously very expensive. I saw an article recently from Christian at the Theo and Harris company and blog and all that stuff, and they covered this watch, kind of talking about some of the things that you and I have talked about previously about, what is the future of tag and where do we see it going? And I think this is obviously very indicative of this. And they kind of came to the same realization in not so many words that we've said for many episodes now, is tag is just kind of like in a weird identity crisis, right? They have these pieces that they release that are just absolute bombs, like just amazing pieces, craftsmanship, design, all these things fantastic, right? I can think of, this Hoyer Monaco. I can think of, the pink dial Carreras, like those 36 millimeter capsule collection, like several models, the new vintage Carreras that they came back out with,
Right.
the new Skipper, right? Like
Yep.
all of these are great hits. And then you have the Super Mario watch, and then you have like connected golf watches. And it's just like, okay, where is the focus? You have Quartz Formula One chronos, right? And nothing against those watches, but they seem so at odds with one another. And for me, it's really refreshing to see Hoyer. And maybe this is just a snapshot in time. And 6 months from now, they drop something else I'm absolutely going to hate. But at least right now, this is a bright glimmer of hope that maybe Tag is starting to rein in the nonsense a little bit and start focusing on producing things that made them the brand that they are, made them have the back catalog that they do. And to me, I think this is certainly a great indication of that. I want to see more from it. The challenge is going to be, can we condition the market to start taking tag seriously enough to spend 10, 12, $8,000 on these watches that they're asking for, which is going to be a big ask, especially when you're comparing it to other brands that are of similar price points and of similar pedigree. That's going to be the challenge.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's always sort of a hurdle in that respect is when I get to a watch that's in that price range, my immediate reaction is, what else could I get for this money?
Exactly.
And like you said, without sort of that brand cachet, I don't know if I'm going to pass this up for a Rolex if I can get one. I don't know if I'm going to pass this up for an Omega. I don't know if I'm going to pass this up for a Zenith. I don't know, at this point.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
especially, I mean, don't get me wrong, the Monaco's a legendary chronograph. But again, even in just what I mentioned, you have the Speedmaster, you have the El Primero. Like, I have options. I
yeah.
don't know if I'm putting all my eggs in the Monaco basket right now.
And here's the crazy thing. This is a Salida based movement,
Right.
right? Salida just got wrecked.
R.I.P. Salida.
I mean, they got absolutely destroyed in Switzerland by that tornado. And it's really sad to see. I mean, I remember when I saw the Houdinki post and it was kind of like talking about it. I'm like, what are we covering like tornado foot? And I'm like, oh, that's a movement, Ebosh. This is a movement company that supplies a very healthy
Lots of
percentage,
people.
a very healthy percentage of the watch industry with movements. So what is that going to make? What is that going to mean for the delivery scope of these watches if they can't source the movements? And that's really an indication for me as a kind of a sidebar. It's really an indication for me that brands really need to start going in house to protect themselves. Because if something like this, some type of act of God situation happens that's completely out of anybody's control, what does that do for your company now? And this could put brands like Tag and others, Oris, and all these companies that are using Solida based movements in a very precarious situation because they are so dependent on these companies to deliver. And right now, I don't know about you, but when I saw the wreckage of the factory, it looks like Solida is going to be out of commission for a very long time. Very long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a problem. I thought of that sort of immediately. I said, thinking to myself, how many people they supply with these movements or based off of their movements, or even just, from a parts standpoint, I'm like,
Yeah.
I think this might get
Yeah.
a little weird, especially given, how sort of the rights to the ETA movements have
I
become
mean,
much tighter recently and things like that. So,
like it or not, that's why the Swatch Group did it. That's why, because when you are completely dependent on somebody else for your success, if that company files bankruptcy, if they get hit by a tornado, if they sell off their intellectual property to a company that buys them out, and they no longer want to supply you with your parts and your movements and your servicing, all of these things, this is going to have residual, resounding effects for the industry for a long time. And I know it's kind of completely sidebar than what we're talking about today, but it's certainly something that I've been thinking about, especially when you see watches like this come out and they have these movements as their base.
right.
This is going to make it very difficult to make these deliveries on time. And it's going to make it very difficult for these watches to be eventually serviced in the future, especially for all those tag owners that have these watches. So we'll see, man. It's yeah, it's gonna be crazy.
And speaking of Solida based movements, I guess we can go over to Oris, right? We saw they had a lovely day over at Truist Park, which is home of the Atlanta Braves. Boo. Who they are commemorating Hank Aaron. And for those who are either not US based or not baseball fans, for the longest time, Hank Aaron was the home run champion of baseball all time before being dethroned by Barry Bonds. So for a lot of people, that's still kind of up for debate, given sort of the era that Bonds played in and all the things that are, controversial, whether it be PDs and such. But they're commemorating Hank Aaron. One person who I communicate pretty regularly with from the Milwaukee area said noted it was interesting that they were playing the Milwaukee Brewers because the Brewers took the place of the Milwaukee Braves. So the Braves moved from Milwaukee.
Ooh.
Aaron played for both teams technically, if you want to get, and we don't know if that was a nod to, history or if that was just coincidental, but could be. You never know. But yeah, Hank Aaron, maybe, best hitter of all time could be. I mean, he was a monster up at the dish, but regardless, they honored him, and that's why everybody's wearing the 44. And so they put together a watch with sort of the Atlanta Braves color scheme, kind of a la the Roberto Clemente watch we saw. The only thing that
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
is sort of weird about this one is there's not really an opportunity to commemorate his number because Clemente was 21. 21 is on the pointer date. Hank Aaron was 44.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I
yeah.
don't know if you would do maybe the four on the outer ring and then the numeral four, go 4-4. I really was trying to come up with a way to do it. It's almost impossible, which kind of stinks. But
I didn't even think about that. But you could have done certainly some creative license and done at the four, done 4-4. I think that that would have been cool.
it was something that
I
ran
mean,
across my mind, you know.
everyone would have done, like, everyone would have understood, you know. But maybe it's also a way to keep the dial much more clean and cohesive. Because sometimes people get very leery about very commemorative type dials and things like that, especially when they're very specific. So, um, anyway, it looked like it was a fun launch. Obviously, I think this is kind of the Josh Shanks influence into Oris, if I'm being honest. Because I mean, you think about it this way, it's like baseball all of a sudden is an Oris focus out of nowhere, right? Like I think in New York, isn't Yankee Stadium have Oris
Yeah,
advertisements
and
now?
and I was gonna say I don't know if it was a chicken or an egg situation where Aaron Boone became an Oris head and then they sort of got into the whole baseball thing, or if that was a reverse situation there where they were getting into baseball and then he got involved. But either way, you know, I mean we've seen him with Orison before, and like you said, they have that at Yankee Stadium, and we've seen them
Yeah,
do
yeah,
now a couple different sort of collaborative watches with these very influential players that also happen to have charity foundations. We know is very big for Oris as well, so that makes a perfect sort of a perfect sense tie in there also in that regard, you know.
yeah. But I like to watch. I think it's cool. It's very simplistic. I think it comes with two bands, if I'm not mistaken. Um, it's nice. I think Oris actually presented one to Hank Aaron's wife in honor of him, which I think was a nice touch as well to have her there and receive that on his behalf, obviously. But very cool. I mean, baseball is an amazing sport, as many people know. I'm sure we have a lot of fans out there that watch the game all over the world. So certainly a global phenomenon and a very cool one to celebrate such an impressive player. Absolutely.
Definitely. And I guess since we've already been on the sports theme here, we have a new Olympic watch, which I'm sure you've seen.
No, I did. It didn't come up on my feed,
Nah,
not at
not at
all.
all. Why would it? But we have a new Olympic Seamaster,
Yes.
gold bezel,
So this is the
right?
Yep,
Gold
Seamaster
hands.
300-meter gold bezel, gold hands, and actually a gold medallion on the case back as well, albeit a small one, but it's in celebration of the 100. I'm sorry, 100, the 1 year countdown to the Olympic Games. If this is anything like what Omega's done in the past for the Olympics, typically there's like a some sort of countdown associated with the start of the game. So typically they'll do a limited edition about a year out, or some type of commemorative edition about a year out. And then right before the games, they'll launch something else to kind of bring the games in to start. And this looks like this is our 1 year countdown watch. I like it. I think it's a very different take on a diver. The last time I saw anything like this was at of the late 90s
Right.
when Omega used to do two-toned white dial divers. So this is kind of a nod to that. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's in Moonshine Gold, which is Omega's yellow gold proprietary alloy, which is very, very impressive material. Hence the price point, because this is not a cheap watch. But one cool thing is it is now the second timepiece that Omega has produced with a quick change system for the bracelet.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, so it does have. I think the first one was the America's Cup from a few years ago. It had the quick change system, and now this one will feature a quick change classic diver bracelet, which leads me to believe that this bracelet will also be compatible with the current lineup of bracelets. So, if any of you guys out there have the OG rubber strap or something like that, and you probably want to pick up a bracelet, you could probably order this one from your local AD or boutique.
Yeah, I mean, nice watch overall. Like you said, not cheap, and certainly an interesting color palette. I mean, I don't know if white dial, gold bezels for everybody, but I think it's definitely for somebody, and I think they're just going to continue to pound their um sort of relationship with the Olympics and all that, and so I'm sure we're going to see some more of that coming out in the coming year. And usually they're a lot more colorful than this, right? Usually you get a lot of like red, blue.
Yeah,
You get the rings a lot of the times.
yeah, it's interesting. They went with more of a Spartan approach on this one. I also did kind of like that they did the little Paris logo for the second hand, the
Right.
little
Yep.
martini olive on the second hand, which is very cool. Um, but I'm excited to see the watch in person. I think it looks very sharp. It's nice that you have some solid gold on it as well, which is very different for the diver family, especially in a bezel. So here it is. Like it or don't like it, it's there. $8,700, not an inexpensive watch, as I mentioned, but I'm sure a lot of that is attributed to the solid gold. And in addition to that, I don't know if you saw this, they also released a new line of NATO straps
Yeah.
for commemoration of the Paris Games too. So there's a blue, yellow, black, green, and red, basically all the colors of the Olympic rings to commemorate that as well. So very cool.
Yeah. Our buddies over at Nomos just dropped a Ahoy Neomatique 38 date in two colorways. They're showcasing it in sort of a uh almost an icy gray and then sort of a beige. Um, I think they've heard the cry a little bit on lugs and case sizes and things, and I'm noticing their watch is coming down an awful lot now, where we're getting a lot of the 38s, 36s, and so forth. And so, I think this one will probably wear a little bigger than the 38. Like you always say, the lugs are a little bit long,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
these are also very heavy on dial, as Nomos is. Um,
Yeah.
and if that's your thing, then this is, you're all over this. But I think these are cool. They're uh they're very classic Nomos look. Let me ask you about the date window. Does that bother you that it's all the way out against the edge of the
Not at
case?
all.
I was trying to
Not at
figure
all.
out if it
Doesn't
bothered
bother me
me.
one
I
bit.
don't think it does, but oftentimes you'll see sort of a half an index with the date sort of inside of that. In this case, the date window is just pressed all the way to the edge of the case, and you don't have an index at 3. You just have a date window, which is color matched quite
Yeah.
nicely, if I do say so. But no, I don't think it bothers
Yeah. I
me.
mean,
I was trying to figure that out.
it 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 doesn't bother me, but do you know why a lot of brands do that with
Why
the
is that?
little kind of like loom plot or something there? Especially as it applies to like diving watches, is part of the ISO certification for a professional diver.
I knew that about
Tech,
divers. Yeah,
yeah. Technically the dates, if they are present, there still needs to be a luminous marker in order to make it ISO compliant, which is funny because the Submariner doesn't have it.
interesting.
Yeah. Submariner doesn't have a loomed date.
Hmm. I guess I never thought of that.
Yes, sir.
Very interesting. Now this one, I do like these aggressive crown guards on this one. They kind of
Yeah,
make the
that's
case
that's
rather asymmetrical, but it gives it a little personality, I think. I think this sort of you know, differentiates it from the rest of their models and sort of gives it a little personality. So I'm digging it.
yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of the Ahoy for a long time because this is, I believe, it's a 200-meter rated watch for Nomos. It has a screw down crown, so this is technically your equivalent a la Aquaterra with perpetual
Right.
date, kind of that sport dress watch. It's no slouch if you want to get it in the water, which is fantastic. It's just, I've always been a fan of this model since they launched it. It just was in 41 millimeters and far too big. And especially when you have these long kind of pointing down lugs, it was very, very hard to wear on most wrists because they just protruded past the wrist bone. So I think now scaling it down to 38 millimeters certainly gonna be a welcome change for most people. It's probably gonna wear more like a 40 than it is, the 41 wearing like a 43. but I think that people will find themselves, much more akin to this model and this take. So we'll see.
Yeah,
But
and
I like it.
they do make pretty neat bracelets. I don't know if you ever seen the Nomos bracelets. They're very
Yeah,
different,
yeah,
but very neat.
yeah.
Yeah. And last up, Citizen is getting in on the color game a little bit. They've dropped from their Hong Kong region
Oh,
5 new mechanical ProMaster divers with textured dials. We're looking at black, yellow, orange, green, blue with sort of the fume look to it. Like I said, 41 millimeters, sort of a rounded cushiony case. Good looking watches, and they have a loomed Pipit 3 despite the the day and date. So
uh,
I mean, I
I
think this is just another feather in Citizens cap of what they've been doing this year. I mean, they've just been putting out really good looking divers left and right.
yeah,
I mean, I guess just watches overall. I mean, been putting out some good stuff regardless, but I think divers especially, they've just been absolutely crushing it,
yeah, for
and
sure.
they continue to do so. You know, that's
And
what I'm looking at here.
and they're kind of the sleeper, you know what I mean? Because most of the time when you think of Citizen, you think of Echo Drive, you think of, something that's a little bit more okay, not as serious, a little bit more cost effective, but they've been producing absolute bangers. And I think overall, like you said, this year they've come out with a lot of great models in their lineup in a very quiet format, right? We got the kind of like funky, almost tuna-ish kind of, quartz divers. I think one of the boys from one of the other sister podcasts has one. They've had a lot of fugus. They've had a lot of different types of loom dials. They did the new
Titaniums, yeah.
the titaniums. They did the new ProMaster Eco drives in the 37 millimeters. They've just been doing a lot, and it's just kind of like they're the steadfast brand, just doing it, not getting all the credibility and all the recognition from it, but certainly, the right people find it, and I think now Citizen is honestly a very, very, very serious player in the affordable end of the spectrum. And these Hong Kong editions, I'm so pissed they're only available for Hong Kong because they look fantastic. They're absolutely gorgeous watches. I forget what the ranges that they base it on. But we have the titanium version and we have the what is it, the all steel version
Right,
that are here in the US. And I mean, you and I talked about this when they first were released, what, a year or two ago,
right.
and we were like, okay, these are hitters. And now they're releasing these amazing fume dials, especially that orange to black fume and that yellow to black fume. Man, straight out of the 70s, absolutely breathtaking. I would love to get my hands on one of these.
Well, we've defeated the out of market monster before, so there's
Oh,
always a chance.
there's always a chance. There's always a chance. And they did it right. Take note, Seiko. They put a loom pip at the end of the second hand, not on the back side of the second hand. Okay. It's very easy and it looks symmetrical. And it's the way it should always be designed. That's it. I'll climb off my soapbox now. But I love these watches, man. I really wish they were available here.
You know, I did they say these are? I don't think they're limited, are they?
I don't believe so.
Because I would think eventually they'll just make their way over by hook or by crook if they make
I
enough of them.
mean, that's true. That's true. But, this is kind of like the mall watch I want to see. Like I want to
Yeah.
walk through
Yep.
the mall and like be like, you know what? It's a
Oh yeah. Let me
Tuesday.
pick that up. Yeah.
Let me just grab it. You know what I mean? But I haven't seen any of these at the malls. I haven't seen any of these kind of in a place where I'm just kind of like, let me scratch the itch and buy something. And that to me is a shame because it means that they're not as prevalent out there as we might see. So hopefully you're right. But typically when they do a launch like this and it's very specific for a market, they're probably testing it out to make sure it's going to sell well before they expand the line. But usually when that happens, it means that we're going to get a different variation. We won't get exactly the same. And I mean, with this aggressive dial and this aggressive colorway, I'm kind of liking it how it is,
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
especially the yellow and the orange. They honestly remind me of like 70s styles that like got exposed to moisture damage. And they start to, I mean, honestly, and they start to kind of bubble up and they, deteriorate towards the extremity, the outside portion of the dial. Like that's exactly what these look like. And I like that. I think it's very cool. They're very textured. There's a lot of visual depth there in something that's very, very simple in its design, but very, very cool. So we'll see. 13.7 mil thick, which is not bad for a diver, especially at 200 meters water resistant. It is automatic with a day date. I mean, how can you pass up on this? Like, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's quite the little package.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So topic today comes from a listener, actually, sort of impromptu here. Today, I was taking a break. I was just checking the old messages and such, and somebody looped myself and Spence from Whiskey and Watches into a chat. Shout out to the friend of the shows, I guess, Automatic Watch is his name. And he basically proposed an idea for an episode, sort of out of curiosity. And he asked, and I think it stems from maybe something he thinks about with his own collection, but he said, based on watches you own, right? Thinking about sort of what the space they occupy in your collection, or whether it be, like a value tier or a complication, or just maybe it's a color. Like if you did not own the specific reference that you have, which watch would you have, like if that watch did not exist, which watch would you have owned in its place? And I was like, that's
Yeah.
a fun topic. And so I think you'll probably end up hearing three of these throughout the next few weeks, which should be for some good fun, given all of the watches that I know between all of us that we have. I think this would be a fun one. The question is choosing which watches to sort of swap out here. And I mean, again, between all of us, we have a lot. But
Way too many.
I
Way
try
too
to think
many.
about the ones that I talk about often, or the ones that I've spoke about on the show. And so those are ones I went with. And again, I didn't necessarily go dollar for dollar price wise on these. Sometimes it was sort of what they mean to my collections. Sometimes it was, oh, this is my, bright color diver. I'm going to swap out the bright colored diver. I sort of just played it by ear in that regard.
Yeah.
Not necessarily going one for one, or whatever, dollars for donuts, whatever the hell you want to call it. But I think I've got four or five here that I've just picked out, again, based on sort of what I've talked about on the show, or watches that I will post once in a while. So I think you've got a few yourself.
Yep.
I will kick it off with the Res KX, because I feel like I've talked about it a lot lately, and that's pretty much what I've been wearing lately. I took it on vacation with me. It's sort of the ultimate summer beater, and people who've picked one up based on sort of our talking about it have widely concurred that they're like, this is the ideal summer DGAF watch, right? It's not GADA, it's DGAF, right? If I beat this thing into oblivion, it was $180. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's made of resin. I mean, I know it's got an automatic movement. I know you can damage it, but again, the DGAF watch. So
That's a new category.
it is. It's not gotta. It's don't give a.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
But so I thought about sort of what it means to my collection as sort of a super beater, and something lightweight, and sort of alternate materials and things like that, and just something fun that would replace that for me. And I leaned towards the marathon general purpose. A lot of times these are coming in small, like I've seen them as low as 34, I think. But it's just kind of their sort of bare bones field watch. Super fun. Again, very lightweight. You can get them, I think, automatic or quartz, maybe even hand wind. I can't really remember. It's been a while since I've perused their website, but
Mhm.
but a lot of fun, you know. And again, you get the tritium tubes, which is really cool,
Yeah.
right? And those are if nobody's ever had tritium, they're always on. They don't go off. So
Yeah. Well, that's what the radioactive materials will do to you.
right. So
They're always on.
you can't necessarily charge them like you would loom, but you will always
Have a glow.
have the luminescence. Yeah. So
Yeah.
when it's dark, they are always
Yeah.
ready to
And
go.
that's always the interesting thing about tritium is like sometimes with loom, like when you're like fully charging it, you go outside from the sun, you come back into a dark room, like it is bright. But a lot of times tritium are just kind of like this consistent glow.
Right.
Like it's not always the most intense, but it's there and it's visible constantly. I've never owned a tritium watch myself, but I've had a bunch of buddies that have, and you got to admire it. Like it's never off. It's just like, hold on, let me get my black light out and charge this baby up. No, it's just like we're glowing all the time. And there's something to be said about that. I think it's very cool.
Yeah, for sure. And I do have to say, although it doesn't have tritium, being up in the sticks in Maine, and you know, you're up here, you sort of take things for granted because you know, in your bedroom or whatever, where the clocks are, if you need to check the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't often sleep with a watch on, and I usually have my phone right next to my bed. But because sort of how the layout of the room was and that it's ultra dark, I didn't have the phone next to me,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to put my watch down because we had, I think, 5 kids between us
Oh God. Yeah.
running around a
Yeah.
cabin.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'll just leave it on. But middle of the night, man, that thing was still lit up like a torch. And I was like, oh, look at this. I could check the time. This is great. And not that that's a big deal in the middle of the night, but you have to understand, my friends' kids wake up at like 5:30, 6 o'clock. So I
Oh
just wanted to know
God.
how much time I had left before mayhem.
Oh,
You know, like my kids are like 7:30, 8:30 kids, but
yeah. No.
that goes away when the other kids are running around screaming and ready for
Yeah.
pancakes and crap. So,
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out how much time I had left on the dad sleepometer. So came in big handy. The that Seiko loom was second to none. But although
We're
not
gonna start calling
tritium,
you John Mayer.
yeah, although not tritium, still excellent.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna call you John Mayer with your what is it, the IWC Big Pilot
Yeah,
um nightstand clock.
right. The nightstand clock, correct. That's great. My wife loves John Mayer.
Well, hey, there
I
you go.
tease her about it all the time.
Oh, anyway, okay. So love the pick, by the way. I think it's certainly a very important capsule in any good collection, and doing something a little bit different. I mean, with the SKXs and everything, it's hard not to love them, and
Right.
it's hard to pick something over that because it is already so great at what it is. But I think certainly some with tritium would be great, and certainly in that kind of same motif, if you will. For me, this was a very interesting episode topic because, like I've echoed on so many episodes before, I don't ever like fall out of love with my watches. So it's like very hard to like think about what I would replace them with if I could,
I mean, listen,
because
you love
I
your wife,
don't.
but you wonder once in a
I hope to God she's not listening to this episode. But no, I mean you're absolutely right. I mean, I think when it comes to a watch, for the sake of the exercise, right? It's funny. I have a Seamaster 300. It's the Heritage, the first version from 2014. And I absolutely love this watch. I did all my diving certifications in this piece. It's a watch that has phenomenal memories. I got married in the watch. I absolutely love it. It'll never leave my collection for obvious reasons. But if I was gonna do it all again, I think I'd still pick it for sure. But if I was gonna go a different route, I think one thing that I would really love to kind of swap out is I've never owned a 300-meter diver in my life. I've never had the classic James Bond wave dial, multi-link bracelet that everyone can't figure out if they love or they hate. I think for me, that would be the pick. And more specifically, I think I would go a completely different direction because the Heritage 300 is obviously a heritage inspired watch.
Right.
It's vintage, got the patina loom, all that stuff. I think for me right now, what's really kind of creeping up in my spine, right? I forget what we talked about, like the watch that has you by the nethers. We
Oh
talked about
yeah,
this like
yep, yep.
way early
The
on.
vice grip, yeah.
The vice grip, yeah, yeah, for sure. But I think the watch that way I would really like to replace it with in the 300-meter line, if I was to do it right now, would be the gray chrome dial with the
Hmm.
blue hands and the blue bezel. I
Interesting.
don't know what it is about that watch, but every time I see it in the case, I can't stop looking at it. I love the original OG blue, the OG black. The new green is fantastic. The polar is fantastic. But this one is kind of the one that doesn't get the most love, and it's just there and it's just like it's edgy, it's cool, it's understated. And I'm like, yeah, that's the one I would pick for sure, 100%. So I think if I was going to swap out any of my watches, the 300 would be one of them. And I would pick that one.
Yeah, I like how you basically traded one for its sister. That was a nice scumbag maneuver. But no, but really,
Hey,
I know I brought the wife into it. And now all bets are off. Um,
That's right. That's right. I just pivoted last minute. You
that's
had
it.
no
Yeah.
idea.
But 300 meter is a can't miss watch, and it's nice. It's nice to see people going with sort of unconventional combinations once in a while. I mean, how many times can I see, uh, you know, white dial, black bezel, or the all
Yeah,
traditional
yeah,
blue? It's nice to see sort of the different combinations every once in a while. I mean, I've seen that one on people's feeds before. It looks really nice in person, I guess. I mean, as far as I could see, I've never seen one in person, but it's a beast of a watch and it's a monster diver, so can't go wrong there. I think it occupies sort of that same space very well, and you'd be able to get away with that in the same respects as far as diving, as far as wearing it wherever you need to go. I think the Heritage is a little more dressy because it's Heritage and because it's a little
for
more
sure.
sort of sexy in that regard. But those things aside, I can't miss as far as that goes.
Yeah, yeah. And I wanted to do something different. Like that color scheme I think is really cool. I don't think enough people give it any credit. I know when it first came out, it was super hot and everyone wanted it because it was so new. And then it just kind of cooled off. And then I haven't seen it posted as much. I haven't seen it, worn as much, but I saw a guy from work the other day, probably a couple of weeks back, and he was wearing it and he walked into the office and I was like, that was one of those moments where you
Nailed
can't
it.
take your eyes off on the watch, and you're like, okay, that's good. But for me, 100%, it would be on the blue rubber. That's when it really pops, is on that blue rubber. I think the bracelet makes it a little bit too monochromatic. It's a lot more stealthy that way. But I think a watch like that is just kind of like, you know, the DGAF watch, right? You're just going to put it on, you're going to do the thing constantly all the time. And that's the one to wear.
Very cool. I'm gonna go next to a watch that I've noticed is picking up a little steam, strangely enough, lately. Because it's not a new watch, but I'm noticing a lot more people picking it up, and I don't know if it's just curiosity thing or market conditions are right or whatever. But um, I'm seeing a lot of shun buns lately. I
Ooh,
don't really know why. It's just a lot of people new watch edition, and I'm like, huh. I was like, you picked this up now. All right. I guess, like I said, the market's probably cooled down a little bit. Maybe they had their eye on it when it came out. It was a little hot. I mean,
yeah.
it was going over retail for a little bit, and then now I think you can get them for pretty good prices. So maybe that's what it is. Um, dial's amazing. There's a lot to be said about this watch. It's titanium. It's got all the finishing. It's got all the sort of sexy handmade Grand Seiko-ness to it. Movement's really cool and all. Uh, I didn't want to go one for one with another Grand Seiko. I mean, obviously something like the Omi Watari, which is like the sort of icy blue waves, spring drive on the back, not the front, which a lot of people like.
Hmm,
Or
hmm.
the Show, which is a one of the smaller round GMTs, but it has sort of a grayish, also kind of a wavy pattern on it, but it almost
Hmm.
looks rainbow when you look at it in light. It's really neat. And I know a few people who've had one. I've held one in my hands, pretty cool. But when I was thinking, sort of a really classy watch, textured dial, for some reason I had one picked, and then I was like, all right, let me just consult the internet a little bit here. And I was looking at texture dials, and an article that was mentioning best texture dials, they had these watches, and I was like, all right, so I know I'm in the right ballpark. Like I'm in the right frame of mind, and I was like, I think a Chapek would be a really nice
Ooh,
placeholder in place of the Grand Seiko in my collection. Again, not definitely not same price range.
yeah, for sure.
Right? The
Definitely
Chapek
not.
Antarctique is definitely not in the same price range, and you're definitely getting some neat bells and whistles. I don't know if you've ever seen those bracelets. They're very, very cool.
Yeah, yeah, they're beautiful.
And you're getting sort of that similar craftsmanship vibe about it, but these are quite expensive, but also very nice. And I've always kind of liked their overall look. And I was pretty happy that C Dub is sort of delivering that in a much cheaper
Yeah,
package
yeah.
now.
And available.
Yeah, yeah. So, but
And
overall, these
and
are watches that I knew nothing about, and then I just every time I looked at them, I was a little bit more impressed, and I liked them a lot, and I was like, all right, I was like, you know what, I guess if again, money no object, sort of just playing around here, sure, why not?
well, it's funny. And on a complete side note, great choice on the Chapek, by the way. But funny enough, I was talking to a collector buddy of mine that bought one of their first ever like production runs. And he said the watch sucks so bad.
Really?
Yeah. He
Wow.
was telling me they had a lot of like QC issues on customer service end and stuff like that. Like basically he was supposed to have like a special like commemorative case back. They got kind of like the insider pricing because it was like the first launch, which
Okay.
again is probably a first launch type situation. They were a little bit too big for the britches at the time, and they just kind of had to grow into it. But he said the movement needed service like a month after he owned it because it was like losing a bunch of time, and they sent his watch with like the wrong commemorative case back, and it was this whole thing. But I mean, he loved the watch. It's finished really really well. But that's the other flip side that I think a lot of people don't understand about these kind of like higher horology pieces is they're more hand worked by people, which means the tolerances for timekeeping are greater, right? You're not going to get the -2 + 2 because it's not designed in CAD on CNC machines, and
Right.
like it's more hand finished, which is it's the artistry of the actual piece itself rather than the technological developments of it, if that makes sense. So it's kind of an interesting thing. But I remember when he told me that, I was like, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, I had to sell it. He's like, I did not like it. He's like, I'm so used to like my super accurate watches, and this was like completely the opposite. So I found it very funny because you're like, yeah, I'm thinking about Grand Seiko, which is known for
Yeah,
accuracy
high
and like spring
accuracy.
traffic dollars. And you're like, I'm gonna go with a Chapek, which arguably is amazing in its finishing, which is on par with Grand Seiko, but not so much in the movement, which I thought was funny. But it's cool to see though, like you said, um, it's nice that somebody like Christopher Ward is really bringing kind of more of a democratic version of the Antarctique to the market. And I think it's a very good looking watch. So regardless of which way you go, whether it was the Antarctique or if you go with the 12, um, yeah, you can't go wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, one's just about $19,000 less than the other one.
right,
So
sure, sure, sure. But it is funny that you did bring up the whole accuracy thing because in my boredom on my 10-hour car ride home, no, I think it was 8.5, but still. Um I decided to just play around and throw out like the ask me anything thing, and somebody was like, would you prefer accuracy or looks in a watch? And I was like,
I saw that. I
I
saw
think
that.
the fact that we are able to accept sort of that margin of error for a watch that is, you know, made, it's sort of with that level of artistry tells you enough that we value sort of the watch itself over the accuracy. You know what I mean?
Oh,
And
sure,
and
sure.
there are extenuating circumstances on both sides where that applies or doesn't apply. And also vintage watches, obviously the term vintage time gets thrown around a lot, right? Keeps vintage
Yeah.
time, which means
Like
pretty
great.
good, but not original spec.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty good. Plus or minus 100 seconds. It's
you
fine.
know. But also, I mean, it's funny. I was listening to somebody who who was or sorry, reading. I was on a forum, and the person, they at least claimed that they were a watchmaker, or at least novice watchmaker, and people were griping about movement accuracy and stuff, and the guy's like, listen, even a watch that's plus or minus 30 a day is still a pretty accurate clock. Like, you're in the right minute.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, you're in the right minute. So it's still pretty impressive that
And there's
a not so accurate or non-regulated movement still can deliver that to you. You know what I mean?
100%, 100%. No question about that. And certainly very true. And that's kind of the funny thing, right? It's kind of like an alternate thing. It's like we get so persnickety sometimes about these things, and it's like our grandfather didn't care.
No,
You know what I mean? Like we're over here thinking about the most accurate watches. Yeah, it's -2 plus 2 seconds a day. And your grandfather's like, hey man,
I'm listening to church
I
bells.
fought it's like I fought on the beaches of Normandy for this, you know. It's like, okay, greater problems in the world.
That's right.
Um, so bringing me to my next pick, and again, this has been a very hard exercise for me because I love all my watches. They're like my children, right? Um, I love my Moonwatch. I finally got one a couple years back. You guys know that. It's been, most of my collection is Omega, so I'm definitely going to stick on that. But I think if I was going to swap that out for something, if it wasn't another Omega, which I'm not going to do that again, um, I definitely would want to go with the new Tag Heuer glass box.
Nice.
I think this is a cool watch. I've had the opportunity to try one on in person. The 39 millimeter case is fantastic. The Super Dome crystal is fantastic. I think my preference is the blue over the other variation. But it's a really beautiful watch. I loved it. I didn't want to give it back, if that tells you anything about it. Now, I'm not the biggest tag person in the world for many different reasons outside of, who they are as a company, but I have to give props where props is due. That's a sweet watch, man, and I really like it. I was very excited that they came back out with it. I'm very excited that they launched kind of a new skipper in it as well. So I think Tag has been on a hot streak. Um, and it's cool to see, but I think this was kind of a step in the right direction.
Yeah, no doubt. And kind of what we were talking about earlier, maybe this is sort of their turning point.
I hope so.
Maybe some of those gripes that people have will be alleviated going forward, because once a brand catches a little fire, so that sort of goes away, right? Like,
Exactly.
if your brand
Well,
makes a comeback, or becomes the hotness all of a sudden, right? All of a sudden, nobody really cares about the stuff people used to say,
no,
right?
absolutely not.
It's very fan
And
driven.
and again, it's all contingent too on exposure, right? Like if you're exposed to it, if it's something that you think is nice and high quality and you enjoy it, then what's to say to the contrary, right? But I think it's a very sweet watch. I think it's very well proportioned. It's cool that they did some interesting upgrades inside to the movement to make the rotor a little bit more kind of tag-esque, if you will. Um, it's very much the vintage design, but giving it modern specs, which I really like too. Now, will it ever fully replace my Moonwatch? No, but I think if I really had to pick some other type of iconic chronograph to fill that bridge or that piece in my collection, then this would be a very serious contender, especially at a very similar price point too. Right, the Moonwatch is around 7,000 ish dollars now. The Hoyer Carrera 39 glass box is 6,450 on a strap. So what's a few $100s more between friends?
All right. I chose not to do Speedmaster because I figure you would. And in thinking about it, I would have to probably go somewhere in the El Primero family. I like too many
I
of their
figured
models. I like too many of their models as far as I don't know which one I would get. I mean, the classic Chronomaster is amazing. The 384 is awesome. 386 is awesome. So I really don't know what the hell I would do there, but that seemed like too almost too obvious for me. So I didn't really even want to put that on the list. Um,
It's funny. It's funny because I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna pick an El Primero or something because I know bro's gonna pick one.
yeah, no doubt. I mean, well, you know what? There's only so many, especially if you're gonna stay in the chronograph ballpark, right? There's only so
Yeah.
many sort of chronographs that have that level of clout to fill those shoes that you're looking at maybe one of like four,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I wanted to do next sort of the I've talked about the black and blue U50 on the show before, and it's black case, blue
Mm,
dial,
mm.
but it's a very faded out gradient blue to black dial. Um, a blacked out watch that I specifically did not get because I had that, um, but has also just like lived rent free in my head is the Darth Tuna. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It's basically a
I
blacked
am.
out
I am.
tuna, and it's sort of makes it not so gaudy because it's all blacked out and there's not a lot of steel. It's not so shiny. I mean, despite sort of the larger case dimensions and the shroud and everything. But again, these are sort of just like the everything I liked about the tuna we talked about last week, I think it was. But just in a modern package. And you
Yeah.
can get the JDM version, you can get the Kanji day wheels and everything that I like about JDM Seikos. But this time I'm getting a honking big a big black watch. But yeah, just high contrast. You're getting the white on the black. You're getting that crazy loom. Um, I believe there are sort of almost a few flavors of the blacked out tuna. I know you can get a 300 meter, you can get 1,000 meter. I can't remember which movement comes with which, but I know you can get both a quartz and I believe an automatic as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, these are just they're just super fun, and like you see like Guy Fieri wearing his tuna,
Yeah.
like he just seems like he's having the best time ever, and so like
I
that,
mean, how can you not? I mean, you're wearing a tuna, right? Like it's such an iconic watch and so many different reasons why it should be amazing and why everyone should have one. And the dark tuna is like one of my favorites.
yeah, it's super cool, and then thanks to people like Uncle Seiko, you have a million rubber straps to choose from to keep that thing smack dab on your wrist. So again, I think it would be a super fun sort of also in the line with the summer watch and the fun beater. I think that would be top notch.
I love it. It's a solid choice. And from someone who wears a blow prof and understands large
Right.
watches,
Yeah, you would get that.
I mean, I get it. I totally get it. I'm here for it. And this watch on an isofrane, or I did a Google search and there's some guy wearing it like on a Seiko style, like the original flat vent, but like it's like an olive drab green with a black matching buckle. I'm like, you sir, you know
You get it.
exactly what you're doing. You get it. You get it. I love this watch. And for me, funky divers have always, had a soft spot in my heart. The tuna collection, especially, even though I've never owned one, I've always appreciated them, especially the kind of funky handset that we talked about last
Yep.
week. They're so unbelievably cool. And this is really where a watch is designed for function over the form, right? The form becomes an afterthought to what it's intended for. It's to make it safer and easier to use while diving. And how it's designed is perfect. And anybody who speaks to the contrary, go get yourself checked because you have no idea what you're doing. No, I digress. And speaking of another diver, to go the non-omega route to start out with, you guys know I have Doxa. I have a soft spot in my heart for Doxa. I have a sub 300 black lung. So this was the aqua lung, kind of the first reissue of the sub 300 vintage watches with the black aqua lung logo on the dial. They only produce, I believe, 300 of these watches. I have a number within the 300, but I love this watch to death. And it's one of my favorites in the collection. It has the bright orange dial, the professional dial, and I'm gonna go the cheap route, but I do if I'm gonna replace it, I'm gonna replace it with another Doxa. And for me, it's the new Doxa Army.
Okay.
I tried it on. Oh man, bro. Oh, this new army is so good. It's so unbelievably good. Um, it's a little bit larger than my current Doxa. It's I think 42.5. My version is a little bit thinner and a little bit smaller case because it's more the original proportions. But this Doxa army, man, it's so good because when you look at it, you're thinking it's a Doxa because it is a Doxa. But when you see it, especially if you've never worn one before, like when I wear my Doxa, like I know when I'm looking at, right? But when I put on the army, it's like it felt familiar to me, but yet still very different to me. And I think a lot of it's attributed to the fact that, it's much more military inspired, hence the name, right? It was supplied to, I think, the Swiss Army or something like Swedish Army, something like that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It feels familiar. You have the shark tooth bezel and all the stuff that Docs is so known for, but you have so many different nuances on this dial and on the bezel that you don't see on the regular professional line, Sea Rambler, Aquamarine, what have you. And I loved it. I really didn't want to give it back. And at just over a couple $1,000, I think it's like 2,000 and some change. It's a serious contender for me. I really want to try to find one and pick one up. I may not buy one new, maybe on the used market, but this watch was really cool and I really enjoyed it. It gave me kind of some Ploprof vibes as well, kind of the big chunky orange hands, and I love the fat broad arrow tip on the second hand. It's just super easy to see. I love the dial layout. It's very cool. Um, and now they make so many different flavors of them. You can buy them in the United States as well, which is nice. You can't get the black ceramic version.
Right.
That was only made for I think it was Analog Shift or Watches of Switzerland, but all the rest of the steel models you can get, and they're cool. They're very, very cool.
Yeah, I mean it's a
So
fun
that
pick. It's a fun pick. I remember wearing your docs, and those old proportions are certainly very, very, very good. Like I remember being like, damn, this wears extremely well for a diver.
yeah.
But yeah, no, the army's cool, and you're getting a little bit of a story. It's a little bit of history. It's a little bit of the sort of the blood feud that went on, which is sort of fun.
Yes, I can't forget that. I was telling the salesperson the story, and they're like, "Seriously?" I'm like, "How do you not know this?" And they're like, "How do you know this?" I'm
Yeah, it
like,
should be the
"Wow,
selling point of this watch.
I know, right?" But I mean, most people don't get into the minutia of the watch industry scandals, if you will.
Yeah,
But it was very cool. I really enjoyed my time trying it on.
no, very cool, very neat. I thought you were gonna go Clive Cussler for a second there, but
I liked it. I did like it. It was a little bit too nuanced for me.
mhm.
Because the Custler is obviously it's a tribute to him, to Dirk Pitt, his fictional character, and himself as a person. It was very cool to see it in person. I liked how they artificially aged it and all that stuff. But when I tried it on, I liked it. I wasn't in love with it. So I think it's for certainly a very special person, maybe someone that really enjoys the novel series and everything like that. This would be a great timepiece for. But trying this one on and then trying on the army right after, I was like, there's not even a chance for the Cussler at this point. It's the army all the way.
Nice. Last one I got on my list is I spoke about the Zodiac, the lime green diver GMT that
Oh,
I have. A
stop
lot of
making me
fun,
jealous. Stop making me jealous.
super summary, a lot of fun, a lot of fun. But I was like, what the heck do I replace something so out there with? And that's what I like
That's
about that
tough,
watch is
man.
it's so out there.
Yeah.
Um, and I sort of came to a fork in the road. And if I was going to stay diver, I think I would have to probably go Aquamatic because they have like those like the Thurso colors. I feel like I could get away with sort of dropping it in one for
Yeah.
one there. A lot of orange, that the teal, white. I think I could get away with that. And then my other thought was if I was to go not so diver, would maybe be like a studio underdog,
Ooh,
right?
I like that.
I
Okay.
think that would be a neat little like backdoor pick there where they give you every flavor under the sun. I mean, I know they're all limited editions, but you could, you get the watermelon, eggplant, whatever it might be,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think any one of them will do the job, and they're all sort of the wind up watch fair space. So I felt like it was
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
appropriate. But yeah, but definitely two models of watch that I've definitely checked out and sort of had my eye on. And we talk about relatively frequently on here, but I thought those would be fun picks to sort of replace my very, very aggressive line bezel GMT.
I mean, that's a solid pick. Studio is always killing it with everything that they do. Um, Even their most recent, kind of commemorative edition, the Blueberry, so good. The one that they did for every watch. Um, Very, very, very cool watch. I love it.
What was their gag watch they made that was actually like, wait, no, you should make this? Was it a pizza watch?
No, it was the eggplant.
No, but there was like a April Fools they did one. I think it was a pizza
Oh,
watch.
maybe was it a pizza one?
I don't know, but I was like,
Because
this actually, I was like,
the eggplant was
right,
the
it
original gag
tongue in
watch,
cheek, yeah.
and then they made it. Yeah, yeah,
I
that
think it
was
was a
so
pizza
good,
watch. And I was
so
like, this
good.
doesn't look that bad though. Everybody
I
likes
mean,
pizza.
I could honestly see it happening. I mean, for sure. And you being a New Yorker yourself, I'm sure you've eaten and made many a pizza
Oh, for
in your
sure.
lifetime.
For sure.
Um, Trying to think because I didn't have anything else, so I'm trying to think if I could scrounge up one last thing that I'd pick. This is hard when you think about your own collection and you can't remember what you have. Is that bad?
I think it could be. It could
Is
be.
that bad? Because I'm thinking like, okay, this is an Omega, this is a Doxa. What else do I have? Um, yeah, I don't got anything else. Nothing that's interesting that I would want to talk about.
Well, even like, what would you swap in for like a moon swatch? Right? Sort of like cheap, fun, but like also like has some balls to it.
I mean, I already have it. You know what I mean? Like I already have the Res KX. Like I don't know if I would need something different than that. Because that really takes the idea of like the disposable timepiece in a in a new way because it's like a day-day automatic. Um the What If collection comes to mind, but we already talked about that, so I didn't want to bring that up again. But I really am gonna get one of those. Get something I can throw into the affordable bin for sure. Um, I don't know, man. I'm trying to think of like I got a bunch of like Hamiltons and man, I don't know. I think I'm out because like everything else is like an Omega. It's all boring at this point.
All right, then we could put it to best. I think we're up over an hour. I think we could.
Sorry to disappoint all the fans. I'm just thinking about my collection. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of boring. Don't have anything that's like really cool that I want to swap out. I have everything that I honestly love. So it's like, what am I gonna do now? You know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can swap your Plopper off for an Ultra Deep.
But see, that's the same thing, right? Like
I'm
it's
just saying,
like
as long as you're
trading
doing.
one Omega. What? Well, you gave me crap for it the first time. You're like, oh, you picked another Omega. That was fun. I'm like, okay, all right. I see. I see. Let me pivot. Let me
No, I
pivot.
just thought it was
But
funny
no,
after
I would
after,
tell.
after talking about wives that you're taking somebody in the same family. That's all.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay. Okay. But no, I totally would swap my Plopro for an Ultra D. I really do like that collection for sure. Um, and specifically, I think I would do. I'd probably do the black fume with the kind of like the electric blue accents. If not, then I would do for sure the new 75th anniversary.
Yeah.
That one is sick. That watch is sick. It's too thick. Well, get a bigger wrist. Go work out.
Don't wear it on a NATO.
I mean, again, just like you know what you're getting into. You don't complain about the deep sea. You don't complain about your James Cameron, which is massive and top heavy, but yet the ultra deep is too thick. Okay, all right, got it. I'm not salty at all about it, by the way.
Nah. But all right. We could probably call this one here. Episode 93 coming up, inching ever closer to the big one
Ugh.
hundo. Somebody asked what we're doing for 100. I have no idea. I was like, I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah, we're 1 week at a time, boys.
Yeah. If I'm 2 weeks out, thinking 2 weeks out, I'm way ahead.
Hey, remember that one time we said that we were gonna pre-record episodes like and keep a bank of and like yeah, that didn't happen.
No, that's like when I was a kid and I'd be like, I'm gonna come home, I'm gonna do my homework right after school so I get it out of the way, and then I can just enjoy my night. That never happened.
Yeah,
I was still doing it the morning of the morning that was due. I was doing it.
Yeah, doing it in the hallway before class starts, and you're like trying to scrabble and you know write everything down and copy off somebody's paper, but not copy too much. Yeah, I know. We all did it. Part of life, I guess.
Yeah. But anyways, episode 92 in the books. We'll keep the ideas flowing for one hundo. But until then, Schmidt, I will see you next week, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. And if anybody has a suggestion for episode 100, let us know.
Yeah,
we'd love to hear it.
Yeah,
because we're out of ideas at this point.
All right, folks. See you next time.
Take it easy.